You make me uncomfortable, Madison. You don't know how to read the room. You are so stiff. You don't fit in my world. You're odd.
Say that again, I dare you.
What would you do, huh? Tell me. My mother thinks you're a man.
I didn't ask what your mother thinks. I asked you to say what you just said. Say it again.
Woman, take a chill pill. You just want to control everyone.
You know what? I can't take this anymore. Have your lawyer ready tomorrow.
You don't fit, Madison. You never did. Those words, after 4 years of marriage, 4 years of showing up, 4 years of making herself smaller so he could feel bigger. Carter Whitfield stood in their kitchen at midnight, looking at his wife like she was a problem he was tired of solving. Madison didn't move. She was still holding her spoon over her cereal bowl, the kind of cereal she ate at midnight because she kept forgetting to eat during the day, because she was too busy running his life for him. "Say that again," she said. Carter loosened his tie. He'd been drinking, not enough to slur, just enough to say the truth he'd been swallowing for years. "I'm saying that my colleagues are uncomfortable. My mother thinks—" "I didn't ask what your mother thinks. I asked you to say what you just said, again." He looked at her. Then he looked away, which told her everything. "You walk into a room like you own it," he said. "These are people with old money, Madison, old connections. They have a way of doing things, and you bulldoze. You don't read the room." She set her spoon down very carefully. "Reading rooms," she said slowly, "is literally my job. I have kept 7 executives alive in 3 states. I read rooms better than anyone in this building. What you actually mean is that I make your friends nervous because I don't pretend to be less than I am. That's not— Did I embarrass you at the gala last month? Is that what this is?" Silence. "Carter, you argued with Senator Halverson about border security for 20 minutes. Because he was wrong. He's a senator, Madison. And I was still right." She laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "This is what you do. Every time I show up as myself, fully, completely myself, you find a way to make me feel like it was wrong, like I should have been quieter, softer, more decorative." She shook her head. "I am not decorative." Carter ran a hand through his hair. "I'm not asking you to be decorative. I'm asking you to be aware, to think about how things look. To who? To people who never learned my name anyway. Your friends have called me the Bodyguard. For 4 years, Carter. At my own dinner table, and you laughed." "I didn't." "You laughed." The kitchen went quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight. Carter straightened up. And then he said the other thing, the thing that had been sitting under all of it. "I gave you access to a life you never would have had. I introduced you to people—" "Stop. You would never have met coming from where you came from." "Carter, stop talking." He stopped. Not because she raised her voice. She hadn't. She stopped him because of the way she said it, like she was closing a door. She looked at him for a long time, and then something in her face settled, not anger, something quieter and more final than anger. "My mother cleaned hotel rooms," she said. 3 buses to get there, every morning for 22 years. She worked doubles so I could go to training programs and get certifications and build something. I came from South Phoenix and I built myself with my hands. She picked her bowl up from the counter. "You came from money and you still need people to be less so. You can feel like more." Carter opened his mouth. "I'll be at the attorney's office at 9, she said. "Have your lawyer ready." She walked to the guest room, where she had been sleeping for 6 months, and closed the door behind her. Not a slam, just a close. Clean and final. That quiet close was louder than anything she could have screamed. "Hey family, welcome to Afropop Korean Stories Hub. If this is your first time here, you are in exactly the right place. We tell stories that hit different. Make sure you like, hit that subscribe button, and turn on your notifications because this one will get you so hooked. Now let's go back to Madison. The next morning she woke up before her alarm. She showered, moisturized, put on her grandmother's gold earrings and a burnt orange blazer that Carter once said was a lot. She ate the rest of her cereal standing over the sink. Then she called her best friend Cheryl. "It's today," she said. Cheryl was quiet for exactly 1 second. Then, "I'll be in the parking lot." "You don't have to—" "Madison Renee Brooks, I will be in that parking lot in 30 minutes with snacks and a playlist. Do not tell me what I don't have to do." Madison smiled, the first real smile in days. The conference room at the downtown Phoenix law firm was all glass and sharp angles and the kind of carpet that costs too much and still looks like nothing. Carter was already there with 2 attorneys. He was wearing his best performance of calm. Steepled fingers, straight back. The small smirk he used in negotiations when he thought he had already won. His attorneys opened with their first offer. Madison's attorney, Vivian Park, looked at the document. Then she looked at Carter's team over her glasses. "Is this a joke?" Vivian said. "Or is this a warm-up?" Carter's lead attorney cleared his throat. "We believe this represents a fair and reasonable—" "My client negotiated her own prenuptial agreement 4 years ago," Vivian said, sliding the document back across the table without ceremony. "She also, as it happens, has documentation of every operational contribution she made to Whitfield Holdings during the course of this marriage, emails, proposals, crisis communications she authored under his name. We can do this the easy way, or we can do it the way that ends up in a business journal. Your choice." The other side of the table went very quiet. Carter looked at Madison. She was looking out the window at the Phoenix skyline like she was already somewhere else. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly, dropping the performance for just a moment. She turned and looked at him. "I'm not doing anything to you, Carter. I'm just leaving." The rest of the meeting took 40 minutes. Carter's team folded on 3 of their 4 positions. The settlement was clean. The building stake she held stayed intact for 6 months. The penthouse was his. She didn't want it anyway. She had never once felt at home in that white, cold space. It looked like a place where warmth came to die. When it was over, she stood, adjusted her blazer, and shook Vivian's hand. Carter said her name 1 more time. Just Madison, like a question. She didn't turn around. Outside, Cheryl was in the parking lot exactly as promised, sitting on the hood of her car with a container of jerk chicken, 2 sodas, and a Bluetooth speaker already loaded. The moment Madison pushed through the doors, Cheryl looked at her face and read it in 2 seconds. "It's done. It's done." Cheryl held her arms open. Madison walked into the hug and held on, and then, standing in a downtown Phoenix parking lot at 10:43 in the morning, she cried hard. The kind of crying that comes from a deep place. Not grief exactly, more like release. Like putting down something very heavy that you carried so long you forgot it wasn't yours to carry. Cheryl didn't say anything. She just held her and let her cry. After 2 minutes, Madison pulled back, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and straightened up. "Okay," she said. "Okay," Cheryl agreed. "I need that chicken." "I know." They sat on the hood of the car in the sun and ate jerk chicken out of the container, and Cheryl played a playlist she had apparently been building for this exact moment for the last 6 months. Madison didn't ask how long the playlist had been ready. Some things you just accept from your people. The next few weeks were unglamorous, real. Madison moved into a clean apartment in Midtown Phoenix. 2 bedrooms, good light, a kitchen she actually cooked in. She was practical about money the way people who grew up without it always are. She didn't buy things she didn't need. She bought a good mattress, a coffee maker, and a plant she named Gerald. She recertified on 3 weapons platforms in one afternoon, eating a breakfast burrito between modules, because her license had been inactive for 8 months. The instructor, a former Marine named Dale, who had seen everything, watched her run her qualification scores and said nothing except, "Still got it." "Never lost it," she said. She called her mentor Roy, retired of Secret Service, the man who trained her when she was 24, and told her she had the best threat instincts he'd ever seen in 20 years of the job. "I'm back in circulation," she told him. "Took you long enough," he said. "Roy, I'm just saying. I told you that boy was soft. You've never met him. I know the type. You got something from Vivian's network yet?" She sent over 4 leads. I turned down 3. "What's the 4th?" She looked at the file on her laptop. "Korean billionaire, expanding into Arizona, real estate and tech, needs a head of executive protection." "Seo-joon?" Roy said immediately. "You know him." "Know of him. Seoul to Phoenix is a significant move. He's serious money, Madison, and serious risk profile. His family's been targeted before in Korea. A kidnapping attempt on his younger brother about 6 years back. He doesn't play with security. Neither do I." "No," Roy said. "You don't." She took the meeting. The briefing was at the Arizona Biltmore. Madison arrived 8 minutes early. Always 8 minutes. Enough to read the room without looking like she was reading the room. She checked all 4 exits, noted the staff positions, clocked the 2 men near the east entrance who were almost certainly his advance team. She found the seat with the best sight line to the door and sat with her back to the wall. Cheryl texted her from the car. "He better be worth it." Then, "I'm Googling him." Then Madison. Then, "Madison, answer me." Then, okay, so first of all, she put her phone face down. Kim Seo-joon walked in at exactly the scheduled time. No late entrance for effect, no entourage, just one assistant. A young woman with a tablet and the efficient energy of someone who has never missed a deadline. Seo-joon himself was quieter in person than his reputation suggested. Tailored dark suit, no jewellery, no performance. He walked into the room and scanned it exactly the way Madison had. Same pattern, same efficiency. He saw her the moment he walked in. She stood. He crossed the room, and they looked at each other for half a second before either of them spoke. 2 people who assess everything and were now assessing each other. "Ms. Brooks. Mr. Kim. I've reviewed your file." "I know," she said. "I reviewed yours too." Something moved behind his eyes. Not quite amusement, recognition. "Sit, please," he said. They sat. His assistant placed 2 folders on the table. Madison didn't open hers. She'd already read the brief twice. He noticed that she didn't open it. "Your response times are exceptional," he said. "Your threat assessment record over 9 years is clean. You've never lost a principal." "Correct. I'm told you left the field 18 months ago." "I did." "Personal reasons." "Resolved," she said simply. He nodded once. "I need someone who understands that my work creates enemies I don't always see coming. I need someone with instincts, not just training. The last 3 people in this role had training. What happened to them? The first missed a threat assessment that I had to correct myself. The second spoke to a journalist about my schedule. The third," he paused, "confused professional closeness with something else." Madison looked at him steadily. "I don't confuse things." "No," he said, looking back at her with the same steadiness. "I don't believe you do." She was hired before she left the building. Cheryl was waiting in the car. The moment Madison opened the passenger door, Cheryl grabbed her arm. "Tell me everything." "It went well. I got the job." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "Cheryl." "Madison, I just spent 45 minutes in this parking lot looking at his LinkedIn photo. Or is he as... He's a client. That wasn't my question. It's my answer. Cheryl stared at her. Madison stared back. Cheryl pointed at her. This is not over. Drive the car. The first 2 weeks were completely, deliberately professional. Madison rebuilt Seo-joon's entire Phoenix security protocol in 72 hours. She walked his regular routes, mapped his meeting locations, identified weak points in his current setup that his previous team had ignored. She replaced 2 members of his local detail, quietly, efficiently, with 0 drama, and briefed the rest on the updated protocols. Seo-joon watched how she worked, without commenting on it. He was observant in the way that very intelligent people are, not intrusively, just thoroughly. He noticed things and filed them away. The first time she saw this clearly was at a downtown Phoenix business luncheon. A man near the window had been watching their table for 11 minutes. His body language was off. Too still, too focused. Madison clocked it at minute 4. She said nothing, adjusted her position, and put herself between the man and Seo-joon without making it obvious. At minute 11, the man stood, knocked over his water glass, and was escorted out by building security for causing a minor disturbance. He was nobody, just an unstable man having a bad day. No real threat. But Seo-joon had noticed, not the man, the way she moved without announcement. Later in the car, he said, "Minute 4. She glanced at him. "What?" "You identified him at minute 4. I identified him at minute 6. She said nothing. "Your instincts are faster than your training," he said. Not as a compliment exactly. As a fact, he was logging. "Is that a problem?" she asked. "No," he said, and went back to his phone. She kept her face neutral. But something about being seen accurately, not flattered, not patronized, just seen accurately, landed somewhere in her chest and stayed there. The small moments started stacking up. There was a charity event in Scottsdale, one of those evenings where Phoenix money dressed up and called it philanthropy. The food was beautiful and cold. The speeches were long, and somebody decided to end the night with surprise fireworks over the garden. They went off without warning, no announcement, no countdown, just a sudden explosion of sound and light overhead. Madison's hand was at her holster before the first one finished blooming in the sky. Combat reflex, clean, instant, completely involuntary. She caught herself in 2 seconds, scanned the space, stood down. Her training snapped back into place over the reflex like a lid closing. 2 seconds. In 2 seconds, she had fully reassessed and returned to professional stillness. But when she turned, Seo-joon was standing slightly in front of her. He had moved, quietly, without announcement, so that his body was between her and the direction of the sound. Not because he thought she needed protection. She understood that immediately. He did it because he recognized what had just happened in her body, and he responded to it instinctively, the way you cover someone who stumbles, without making it a thing. The fireworks continued. He stayed where he was until they ended. Then he moved back to his original position like nothing had happened. He never mentioned it, not that night, not ever. Madison stared at the sky for a moment longer than necessary and thought, who is this man? Now pause for a second. Think about what just happened. He didn't ask her if she was okay. He didn't make a big deal of it. He just quietly moved. Has someone ever done something small for you that hit bigger than anything loud ever could? Drop it in the comments. We're reading every single one, and don't forget to tell us where in the world you are watching from. The thing that Carter never understood about Madison, the thing that quietly ate her alive during their marriage, was that she gave everyone else armor and had nobody to give her any. That was the job. Protect the principal. Absorb the environment. Stay sharp, stay calm, stay invisible. And then go home and be a trophy wife at a dinner party and make sure not to take up too much space. Seo-joon had never once treated her like she was taking up too much space. She noticed this, the way you notice when a headache finally stops, not with drama, just with relief so deep it embarrasses you. 3 weeks in, a situation developed, the kind that tests a team. Dennis Schultz, a former property development partner who felt he'd been underpaid when Seo-joon acquired one of his Arizona projects, had been circling. He started showing up at events, not doing anything overt, just being present in ways that felt intentional. His name had come up in 2 separate conversations Madison overheard. She filed it, watched it, said nothing yet because she needed a pattern, not a feeling. On a Tuesday, Schultz showed up at a parking structure connected to Seo-joon's Phoenix office building. He sat in his car for 40 minutes, didn't get out, just sat. Madison had the plate flagged before he'd been there 20 minutes. She ran it, got his full profile, and had a threat assessment written and on Seo-joon's desk before his 3 p.m. meeting. Seo-joon read it quietly. Then he looked up. "How long have you been watching him?" 11 days. "And you're only telling me now." "I didn't have enough to tell you before now. A feeling isn't a threat assessment." He looked at her for a moment. "Most people would have told me immediately to seem proactive." "I'm not most people. I'm good at my job." He looked back at the document. "Handle it." "Already am." Schultz received a very polite, very firm communication from Seo-joon's legal team the following morning. He did not show up again. Seo-joon said nothing more about it. But that evening, at the end of a long day, his assistant appeared at Madison Station with a tray. A coffee, exactly the way she took it. No sugar, splash of oat milk. And a container of food from the South Phoenix Eritrean restaurant she had saved his dinner event with 2 weeks earlier. Madison stared at the tray. The assistant said, "Mr. Kim said you missed lunch, and the previous 2 lunches." Madison looked across the floor to where Seo-joon was in a glass-walled conference room, his back to her, deep in conversation. He had noticed 3 missed lunches. In the chaos of his own schedule and his own business, he had noticed 3 missed lunches. She ate every bite of the food. Then she sat for a minute, staring at nothing in particular. Cheryl texted at that exact moment. "How's the job going?" Madison typed back. "Fine, Cheryl. That's it?" "Fine." Madison, "Eat your food, Cheryl." Cheryl, "Something happened." Madison, "Good night, Cheryl." Madison. She put her phone away, but she was smiling at her desk, and she stayed that way for longer than she would ever admit to anyone. The parking garage happened on a Tuesday. It was the kind of day that stacks on you. Not one big thing. Just 15 medium things arriving one after another until you're carrying the weight of all of them at the same time, and your face is perfectly fine, but your chest is not. It started with a 7-hour board meeting where Madison stood at the back of the room and watched Seo-joon dismantle a bad acquisition proposal with the kind of calm precision that made the presenting team visibly sweat. It moved into a press situation around noon. 2 journalists who had gotten past the front desk and needed to be escorted out professionally and firmly, while Seo-joon's PR team scrambled. Madison handled it in under 6 minutes. Then at 4 p.m., her phone buzzed with an email from Carter's attorney. He was contesting a minor clause in their divorce settlement, something small and technical about the building stake. It was not about the clause. She knew it wasn't about the clause. He was doing what people do when they can't accept that something is over. He was finding small legal threads to pull so he could keep hearing her name in a professional context. She forwarded it to Vivian without a word and put her phone back in her pocket. She was fine. She handled it. She handled everything. By 11 p.m., after she had walked Seo-joon to his car and watched his driver pull out of the structure, she sat on the hood of her own car, and the day hit her all at once. Not with tears at first, just heaviness. The specific kind of exhaustion that comes from being strong for a very long time with no one to be strong for you. Then the panic attack came. It had been building since the email. She recognized the signs by now. The tightening in her chest, the way the air started feeling thick, and the slight dissociation around the edges of her vision. She had been managing these for 2 years. She was good at managing them. She started her breathing pattern, kept her face neutral, focused on the concrete pillar in front of her. One thing at a time. She was fine. She was going to be fine. She was crying, but she was going to be fine. Then footsteps. She had her face clear in under a second, spine straight. Hand came up to adjust her jacket, like that was what she'd been doing. Seo-joon walked around the corner. His driver had circled back for a folder left in the car. He had come himself rather than send his assistant because it was late, and now he was standing 6 feet away from Madison Brooks, sitting on the hood of her car at 11 p.m. in a parking garage with her eyes slightly red and her composure exactly 1 layer too perfect. They looked at each other. She said, with complete professionalism, "The folder's in the back seat. I'll grab it." He said, "It can wait." He walked to the car next to hers and leaned against it, not hovering over her, not crouching down to her level to make it a moment, just standing near her, at the same elevation, like 2 people who happened to be in the same parking garage. He took out his phone and after a minute said, "There's a coffee place 2 blocks from here that's open. Is black fine or do you need the oat milk?" She looked at him. "Both," she said. He ordered. They waited. Neither of them said anything important. She told him parking garages echoed too much, and he told her he used to tape paper to his glass office walls in Seoul when he needed to think without being watched. She looked at him for a long time after that. "You taped paper. Regular printer paper." The assistant was horrified. As she should be. "It worked." Madison shook her head slowly. "A whole Billionaire. Printer paper. Billionaires have sensory preferences too." She laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. Unexpected and a little helpless. It echoed in the garage and she clapped a hand over her mouth. He looked at her when she laughed. Not with a smile exactly. With something quieter, like he was storing it. The coffee arrived. They drank it in the garage. He never asked what was wrong, never made her explain herself, or perform recovery or frame what he'd walked in on in any particular way. He just drank his coffee and let her be a human being. When they were done, he picked up both cups, tossed them, and said, "The folder." She retrieved it. He said goodnight. He left. She drove home. Sat in the parking lot of her building for a few minutes. Then she called Cheryl. "He sat with me in a parking garage for 40 minutes because I was having a bad moment," she said. He didn't ask why. He ordered coffee and talked about printer paper. Silence. "Cheryl." "I'm here," Cheryl said. Her voice was different, quieter. "I'm just—" "Yeah, I'm here." "It's nothing," Madison said. "Okay," Cheryl said. Neither of them believed her. Meanwhile, across Phoenix, Carter Whitfield was in a different kind of quiet. His VP of Operations, Greg Falk, the man Madison had mentored through 3 crises and a near-career-ending miscommunication in his 2nd year, had submitted his resignation. Greg had been at the company for 6 years. He didn't leave for a competitor. He went independent. He texted Madison before he handed in his notice. "For the record, I always knew who was actually running things. Good luck with everything. You deserve it." She read the text and felt something complicated and warm. Carter read Greg's resignation letter and felt something cold. He told himself it was coincidence. He had a good company, solid structure. He didn't need any one person. He had built this, hadn't he? His head of client relations submitted her notice the following week, then a senior account manager, and another. None of them were going to the same place. They were scattering, some independent, some to smaller firms, some calling in favours and starting new things. But every single one of them sent Madison a message before they left. Carter called a meeting of his remaining leadership team. He talked about culture, about direction, about exciting opportunities ahead. 3 people in that room had already updated their resumes. After the meeting, his assistant knocked and told him Ashley had called. He had forgotten he was supposed to have dinner with her last night. He called her back. She was pleasant about it. A little too pleasant. The specific pleasantness of someone who has already made a decision and is just being polite until they can execute it. He didn't register it. He poured himself a scotch instead and called a private investigator named Kurt, who he'd used once before for a competitor situation. "I need you to look into someone," he said. "Not for anything." He paused. "I just need to know what she's doing." Kurt asked for the name. Carter was quiet for a second. "Madison Brooks," he said. "If you're still with us at this point, you already know this story is different. Hit that like button right now. It tells us to keep making stories like this one, and subscribe if you haven't yet. This channel exists for people who want stories that actually feel like something. Now, back to the man who just made the worst investment of his life." Kurt was professional, thorough and fast. Within 10 days he had photos, a schedule summary, and a background refresh on Madison's current activities. Carter sat at his desk and went through the file. Photos of Madison at Seo-joon's office building, at events, in professional briefings, nothing intimate, nothing compromising. She was doing her job. Of course she was. Madison always did her job. That had never once been the issue. But Carter looked at one photo longer than the others. It was from a Phoenix business summit, taken from a distance. Madison was standing at the edge of a room talking to someone, and she was laughing. Not the controlled, appropriate laugh she used at his dinner parties. The real one, head slightly back, completely unguarded. He hadn't seen that laugh in years. He told himself it was about the business. He told himself he was concerned about confidentiality, about what she might know about his operations, about exposure. He built a very reasonable-sounding professional justification in his head, and he almost believed it. Then he looked at the photo again. He picked up his phone to call her. Put it down. Picked it up again. Dialed. She didn't answer. He tried to compose a text 3 times and deleted each one. The 4th one he sent. "Vivian says you're contesting the clause filing. Can we just talk like adults?" She read it. He saw the read receipt. She didn't reply. He put his phone down and refilled his glass and sat alone in the Scottsdale penthouse that had never once in 4 years felt like anyone actually lived there. Seo-joon's COO, Park Jin-ho, flew in from Seoul on a Thursday morning. Jin-ho was 43, wore glasses he constantly forgot to clean, and had known Seo-joon since they were both broke young men eating bad food in a Seoul studio apartment and arguing about whether the company would be worth anything in 5 years. He was the only person on earth Seo-joon was fully honest with. Jin-ho arrived, went to the hotel, showered, and then came to Seo-joon's Phoenix office and sat across the desk from him and looked at him for about 30 seconds. "What?" Seo-joon said. "Nothing," Jin-ho said, opening a room service menu he'd brought from the hotel for reasons that were unclear. "Tell me about the Arizona expansion." They talked business for an hour. Real business. The Schultz situation, the tech acquisition timeline, the real estate plays that were moving faster than projected. Seo-joon was sharp and precise as always. But Jin-ho noticed something. In the middle of a sentence about Q4 projections, Seo-joon's eyes moved briefly to the window, to where, on the floor below them, Madison was running a briefing with the security team. He looked for exactly 1 second and then continued his sentence without pause. Jin-ho said nothing. 2 hours later, at dinner, he said, "So, how long?" Seo-joon didn't look up from his menu. "How long what? How long have you been looking at her like that?" Seo-joon closed his menu. "I don't." "You did it twice in the meeting, once in the elevator when she walked past. You don't look at investments like that. You don't look at employees like that. You look at Jin-ho. People you're absolutely in trouble over like that." Jin-ho opened his menu again, unperturbed. "I'm going to have the steak. Do you want to talk about it, or should we pretend for another 30 minutes? Seo-joon was quiet for a long moment. "She's my head of security," he said. "I know. She just came out of a marriage. I know. She doesn't. I don't know what she also know. So there's nothing to talk about." Jin-ho looked at him over his glasses. "You just described someone who notices everything, makes you eat actual food, and who has, your words, the best professional instincts you've encountered in 20 years of being in rooms with dangerous people." He paused. "You're describing someone you want to build something with." Seo-joon said nothing. "The steak is really good here," Jin-ho said. "And you're completely cooked, my friend." Seo-joon took 3 days after that conversation. He was not an impulsive man. He thought in full. He considered Madison's position, recently divorced, new chapter, professional environment. He considered his own. He considered what it would mean to say something and be wrong about how she felt. Then he decided that Madison Brooks was not a woman you played games with or danced around. She was direct. She deserved directness. He told her he needed to speak with her outside of work hours. He was clear that it was not about the job, that whatever he said had no bearing on her position, and that she was completely free to decline the meeting. She agreed to it. They met at a quiet restaurant in downtown Phoenix, not a power dinner. Just food and a table and 2 people. Madison wore her hair out and a dark red top that had nothing to do with work, and she sat across from him and looked like a woman who had decided to show up fully and see what happened. He told her clearly that he had developed feelings for her, that he was aware of the timing and the professional context, and he had wrestled with whether to say anything. That he was telling her because she deserved honesty and not because he expected anything from her. He told her to take as much time as she needed. She looked at him for a long time. The restaurant was quiet around them. Outside, Phoenix was doing what it does at night. Warm air, distant lights, the particular hum of a city that stays awake. "Seo-joon," she said finally, "do you know how long it's been since a man was just honest with me?" He waited. "Long enough," she said, "that I'm going to need a minute." "Take what you need," he said. She nodded. And they finished their food, and he drove her home. And they said good night at the curb, like 2 people who had just handed each other something fragile and were being careful not to drop it. She took 3 weeks. She went to Cheryl's salon on a Saturday and sat in the chair while Cheryl did her hair, and she talked it through out loud because that was how she processed, speaking it into the air and hearing how it sounded. He told me, and then, just let it be. No pressure, no follow-up texts. Cheryl, a man with patience in this economy. I'm serious. So am I. Continue. I have a rule about mixing professional. You also have a rule about not eating past 9, and you eat cereal at midnight 4 times a week, so. Madison was quiet. What are you actually scared of? Cheryl said, not unkindly. Madison thought about it, really thought about it. That I'm just healing and I'm confusing. You're not confused, Madison. You are the least confused person I know. You know exactly what you feel. You're scared it'll get taken from you again. Silence. He moved in front of you during fireworks and never said a word about it, Cheryl said quietly. He ordered you coffee in a parking garage and talked about printer paper. He tracked 3 missed lunches. She met Madison's eyes in the mirror. Carter never once noticed when you hadn't eaten. Madison looked at her own reflection. Then she called her mother. Ruth answered on the second ring. Madison told her everything. The divorce, the job, Seo-joon, the parking garage, the dinner, the 3 weeks of sitting with it. Ruth listened without interrupting, which was how she always listened. When Madison finished, Ruth said, "Baby, is he kind?" "Yes." "Does he see you?" "Yes." "Then what are you doing sitting on the phone with your mama?" She walked into his office on a Thursday morning without an appointment, which she had never done before. His assistant looked up with alarm. Madison held up one finger, "Give me a second," and pushed open the office door. Seo-joon was at his desk. He looked up. She stood in the doorway with her arms folded and said, "I thought about it." He set his pen down. "I'm not easy," she said. "I need you to understand that going in, I'm loud. I will eat cereal at any hour I choose. I have opinions about everything, including your driving, which is, and I say this with respect, not great. I still have a nightmare sometimes about a job in Tucson in 2019 that I don't talk about yet. I come from South Phoenix, and I am not going to make myself smaller to fit into any room, including yours." She held his gaze. "If that's too much, say it now." "It is not too much," he said. "I wasn't finished." He closed his mouth. "My apologies." She thought about it. "That's actually everything I had." He stood up slowly, and for the first time in all the weeks she had known him, he smiled, completely, without reservation, and it did something to the room that she felt in her chest. "Can I speak now?" he asked. "Go ahead." "I don't want you smaller," he said. "I want you exactly as you are. I've wanted that since the parking garage." She looked at him. "The parking garage." "Before the parking garage," he corrected. "But the parking garage is when I stopped pretending I didn't." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Your driving is genuinely concerning. I've been told. I will be commenting on it regularly." "I assumed." She smiled. He smiled. And the months of careful, patient distance between them folded up and put itself away. Their relationship was not a transformation story. Madison did not become someone new. She became more fully herself, which was different and better. Seo-joon learned her the way he learned everything, completely, and with real interest. He learned that she took her coffee with no sugar because she gave it up at 23 after a health scare she mentioned once, and never again. So he never put sugar in her coffee and never asked about it. He learned that she hummed when she was concentrating, a low, tuneless sound she was completely unaware of. He learned that she read 3 news sources every morning before she spoke to anyone, and that her opinion of a story was always more layered than the headline. He learned that when something actually hurt her, she made a joke, and he learned to hear the hurt underneath the joke and address that, not the punchline. She learned him too. She learned he was the son of a factory worker in Busan who ate instant noodles in a one-room apartment until he was 30. She learned he called his mother every Sunday morning at 9, regardless of what time zone he was in or what deal was closing. She found out about the photo of his father. Deceased 3 years, kept in his desk drawer, not on display. Entirely by accident when she was looking for a pen. She didn't tell him she'd seen it. but she started making sure his Sunday 2 p.m. slot stayed clear every week without exception. Blocked. No meetings, no calls. He noticed. One Sunday, he looked at his calendar and then looked at her across the office. He never said anything about it. He didn't have to. There was also friction, because two strong people in close quarters always have friction. She disagreed with the security decision he made during a high-profile event, a venue change that she felt created blind spots. And she said so. Not privately. In front of his assistant. Clearly and directly, and with her reasons lined up. He didn't love it. They had a real argument in his office afterward. Not a screaming match. A proper argument. Both of them standing their ground. Both of them landing points. Neither of them backing down until they had both heard everything the other said. It lasted 16 minutes. Then they both stopped at the same moment, and the silence lasted about 10 seconds, and then they started laughing at exactly the same time. Not because anything was funny, just because the argument had burned itself clean and there was nothing left but the relief of being with someone who could take what you were actually giving. "You're infuriating," he said. "I've been told," she said. "Who told you?" "You. Just now." He shook his head, but he was still almost smiling. They got married quietly, a small ceremony at a chapel in downtown Phoenix, officiated by a judge who was a friend of Vivian's. No grand event, no performance. Cheryl cried so hard she had to step outside twice and came back both times with her mascara completely gone and 0 apologies. Jinho gave a toast that was 30% sincere and 70% the funniest roast Madison had ever been subjected to, and she laughed through all of it. Ruth sat in the front row in a yellow dress. Madison saw her when she walked in, and something in her chest opened up completely. Her mother, who had worked doubles and taken 3 buses and never once asked for anything, sitting in a yellow dress watching her daughter step into something that was genuinely, thoroughly, loudly good. Seo-joon saw Madison look at her mother and he reached over and took her hand. She let him. Phoenix found out the way Phoenix always finds out. In stages. First the people who were at the ceremony, then their contacts, then a column in a local society blog that described it as the most unexpected remarriage of the year, with the specific tone of someone who wanted to say more, but couldn't quite. Madison read the column, forwarded it to Cheryl with no comment, and Cheryl responded with a voice note of herself, laughing for 45 unbroken seconds. Then the Phoenix Business Journal came. Not for the marriage, for Madison. They wanted to do a profile on her company, Brooks Protective Group, which she had quietly launched and which had already signed 6 Phoenix corporate clients in its first month. She agreed to the interview, on her terms, in her space. The photographer tried to get her to soften her posture. She looked at him. He did not try again. The piece ran. Sharp. Direct. Not a single word Madison wouldn't have chosen herself. It talked about her training, her career arc, her new firm. It mentioned her marriage briefly and moved on because Madison had made it clear the marriage was not the story. She was the story. It became the most read piece on the publication's website in 2 years. Our Seo-joon read it on his phone over breakfast and set it down with an expression that was very close to pride. "You could have mentioned the career connection," he said. "It would have generated more—" "I don't need your name to generate interest," she said, eating her cereal. "I know," he said. "That's not what I meant." "What did you mean?" "I meant I'm proud of you." She ate her cereal. Her ears went warm. She pointed the spoon at him without looking up. "Don't make it weird," she said. "I'm not making it. You're being very sincere and it's 8 in the morning. I'll schedule sincerity for a more convenient time. Thank you." He went back to his coffee. She went back to her cereal. And it was the most ordinary, most genuinely warm morning she had had in longer than she could name. While Madison was building, Carter was unravelling. It happened the way real unravelling happens, not all at once, not dramatically, but in small daily collapses that add up faster than you can manage them. The company hemorrhaged 3 more mid-level managers in 1 month. His 2 biggest remaining clients started asking questions about service continuity. One of them, a commercial real estate group that had been with Whitfield Holdings for 11 years, sent a formal letter requesting a strategic review meeting, which in business language means we are considering leaving and want to give you 1 chance to talk us out of it. Carter took the meeting. It did not go well, because the client's main contact was a woman named Sandra, who had dealt almost entirely with Madison during the years of their partnership. She had been communicating with Madison directly, getting problems solved quickly, getting clear answers and real follow-through. And Sandra sat across from Carter in this meeting and was completely polite and completely unmoved by anything he said, because she had already quietly reached out to Brooks Protective Group for a security consulting contract. Carter did not know this yet. Ashley left on a Wednesday. He found out at 6 p.m. when he came home, and her key was on the counter and her closet was empty. No note, no call. Just the key and the absence. She had moved out efficiently and completely, and it was so clean it almost felt professional. He called her. Voicemail. Texted her. Nothing. He sat in the penthouse that night and felt the specific quality of silence that belongs to spaces where 2 people used to be and now there is only 1. He poured a drink. He thought about calling someone, his mother, a friend. He opened his contacts and scrolled and realised with a clarity that was cold and uncomfortable that most of the numbers there were business contacts, not people. The actual people in his life. The ones he would call at 10 p.m. with no agenda, he had let drift over years of prioritising the performance of success over the experience of connection. Madison had tried to tell him this. She had said it a dozen different ways over 4 years, and he had heard it each time as criticism instead of information. He poured another drink. Meanwhile, the Dennis Schultz legal situation was developing complications. Schultz's attorney had been building a case challenging the structure of the original Arizona property deal, not Seo-joon's acquisition of it, but the deal that existed before the acquisition, the original deal, the one brokered in part by a silent intermediary who had taken a fee for facilitating the introduction between Schultz and the original buyers. That intermediary, it emerged, was Carter Whitfield. Carter received a letter from Schultz's legal team on a Thursday morning. It was not an accusation. It was a request for documentation. Very polite. Very precise. The kind of letter that arrives quietly and then detonates 6 weeks later. Carter called 3 attorneys. The first 2 were genuinely unavailable. The third gave him a preliminary opinion that he did not enjoy receiving. He called Vivian Park. Her assistant answered and said Vivian was unavailable and would return the call. Vivian did not return the call. He called Greg Falk. Greg picked up. They talked for 20 minutes. Greg was patient and honest in the way that only people who no longer need something from you can afford to be. Carter, Greg said at the end of it, I'm going to say something, and I need you to hear it as a person, not as a former employee. You had something extraordinary in that woman, not just her skills, though her skills were exceptional. Her judgment, her loyalty, her ability to make everyone around her better without needing any credit for it. A pause. You made her invisible in public and then relied on her completely in private. That's not a relationship. That's an extraction. Carter was quiet. The company problems, Greg said, are a symptom. They're not the disease. Carter said nothing for a long time after he hung up. He went to his office window and looked out at the Phoenix skyline and had what was probably the most honest internal experience he'd had in years. Not comfortable, not productive, just true. He was the kind of man who needed to lose something completely before he understood what it had been. He'd lost it completely. The charity gala was 3 weeks away when Carter found out Madison would be there. It was the Whitfield Foundation annual event, his family's event, which he still chaired despite everything. He got the updated sponsorship list from his events coordinator and saw it immediately. Kim Seo-joon's company was the headline donor, and next to the co-chair listing for the fundraising initiative was a name he knew better than almost any name in the world, Madison Brooks Kim. He stared at that hyphen for a long time. His first instinct was to call his attorney and find a way to restructure the co-chair arrangement. His second instinct was to realize that was insane and that he was running out of credible moves. His third instinct, the one that came at 2 a.m. 2 nights before the gala after a scotch too many, was that he needed to see her. That if he could just see her, just talk to her, he could say the things he hadn't said and maybe what, exactly? He didn't finish the thought. But he put on his best suit on the night of the gala and told himself he was going to be professional and composed and that it was just a fundraiser and he was just the chairman. He was also 40 minutes late because he had 3 drinks at home first, not enough to show, just enough to make his judgment soft around the edges. Madison arrived at the Biltmore, and the room responded to her the way rooms respond to people who belong in them. Not because of who she was married to, because of who she was. She had organized half of this event herself. She knew the caterers, the staff, the layout. She had co-designed the fundraising pitch that had already cleared its target by 40% before the evening started. She wore a deep green gown, the kind of bold, deliberate colour choice that Carter would have quietly suggested she reconsider, and which she had therefore never worn to any event he attended. She wore her grandmother's gold earrings. Her hair was out and full and unbothered. Seo-joon was across the room when she walked in, mid-conversation with Phoenix's mayor. He looked up. From that distance, in that light, in that dress, she was something. He excused himself from the conversation without finishing his sentence. The mayor blinked. Seo-joon was already across the room. He came to her side and she turned and looked at him and he said, "You look—" "Don't say it weird," she said. "I was going to say exceptional." "That's fine." She smoothed her dress. "Behave. We're working." "I'm always working," he said. "You just abandoned the mayor mid-sentence." He was repeating himself. She pressed her lips together to keep from smiling. "Go back to him. I have 4 conversations to get through before the program starts." He went. She watched him go for exactly 1 second and then turned and walked into the room like she owned the event, which she largely did. Carter arrived at 9:41 p.m. He stood at the entrance of the ballroom and took in the room. The event was running beautifully, clean, well organized, the energy warm and genuine. He recognized some of it as his family's foundation work. He recognized more of it as simply better than it had ever been before tonight. He spotted Madison from across the room. She was talking to a group of Phoenix business figures, laughing at something one of them said. He got a drink from the bar and watched for a while before he crossed the room. She saw him coming. Of course she did. She always saw everything before anyone else did. She finished her conversation naturally, not rushing, not cutting it short, and then turned to face him as he arrived. "Carter," she said, "you look tired." "Madison," he tried to smile. It came out wrong. You look like yourself, really like yourself." "I am really myself." He cleared his throat. The event is incredible. You did this? Mostly. It's better than it's ever been. Thank you. He was quiet for a moment. Around them, the gala moved and sparkled, and people laughed and made bids on auction items. He stood in the middle of all of it and looked at the woman he had spent 4 years making feel like a problem. I've been thinking, he started. Carter, let me just... He lowered his voice. I've been thinking about what Greg said and what I said to you in the kitchen, and I know that I wasn't right. I wasn't right about a lot of things. I made you... He stopped, started again. I know what I did. I know how I made you feel. And I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I need you to know that I see it now. Everything you were, everything I... He stopped. His jaw moved. Is there any version of this? Any version at all where... No, Carter. Quietly. No anger in it. He looked at her. Just like that. It's not just like anything. It took me 4 years to get here. She kept her voice low and even. I'm not angry at you anymore. I want you to know that because I think you need to hear it. But I'm also not available to you. Not in any version. What we had is over, and what I have now is mine. And it is good, and it is real, and I am not going back. Something wounded and petty moved across his face. The old Carter, the one who needed to win, came to the surface briefly. So that's it, he said. You just move on. Find yourself a billionaire and pretend the last 4 years. I didn't find myself anything, she said, and for the first time her voice had an edge. I built myself, Carter. That's what I've always done. And Seo-joon didn't rescue me from you. I rescued myself. He just happened to be smart enough to recognize what was standing in front of him. Carter opened his mouth. He didn't get the next word out. Because Seo-joon was there. He hadn't rushed. He had looked up from across the room at some point during this conversation and read the geometry of it, Madison's posture, Carter's body language, the angle of the whole exchange. And he had crossed the room at a measured, unhurried pace. No drama, no raised voice, no performance. He arrived at Madison's side and reached to the chair beside her where her coat had been draped since she arrived and settled it around her shoulders in one quiet, deliberate motion. Then he looked at Carter, not with hostility, not with triumph, with the specific, settled calm of a man who has nothing to prove and knows it. You lost her, he said, when you made her feel unsafe in her own home. The sentence landed in the space between the three of them and stayed there. Carter stared at him, then at Madison, then at the floor. He had nothing. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, Carter Whitfield had absolutely nothing to say. He nodded once, not agreement, just the last movement available to him, and walked away. Through the crowd, toward the exit, and out of the gala without looking back. Madison watched him go. Then she turned her head and looked at Seo-joon with one eyebrow up. You've been sitting on that line, she said. For approximately 4 months, he said. Did it feel as good as you thought it would? He considered this honestly. Better. She laughed. Fully, completely. The head-back laugh that echoed. A few people nearby turned and looked, and some of them smiled without knowing why. Because there is something contagious about someone laughing from a genuinely free place. Seo-joon looked at her while she laughed. His expression was not complicated. It was just settled, like a man who is exactly where he intended to be. She collected herself, smoothed her coat. Come on. The program starts in 7 minutes, and I need to make sure the third auction item is positioned correctly, because the last time I left it to the events coordinator, it ended up behind a pillar and nobody bid on it. It's a charity gala. It is also my event, and that pillar placement cost $12,000 last year. He followed her. "You have a number for a misplaced auction item." "I have numbers for everything." "I know," he said. "It's one of my favourite things about you." She glanced back at him. "Don't be charming when I'm working." "When should I be charming?" "Schedule it." "For when?" "After the pillar situation is resolved." "Understood." They walked back into the room together, and the gala carried on, and Phoenix glittered around them, and nobody watching them would have been able to identify the specific gravity of what had just happened in the previous 20 minutes. It just looked like two people moving through a room with purpose. Like they belonged there. Like they belonged everywhere. The gala raised more money than the Whitfield Foundation had raised in its previous 3 years combined. Madison's name was in the programme as co-chair. Seo-joon's company was listed as headline donor. Carter's name was at the bottom of the founding family acknowledgements, in the same small font it had always been in, which had always been enough before tonight. He drove home alone. He passed the Midtown building where Madison's apartment used to be, where she had moved after the divorce, the modest place with good light that she'd already left for something better. He sat at a red light and thought about Greg's word, extraction. He thought about the way she had looked across that room earlier, like she was exactly where she was supposed to be and had always known she would get there. He went home. He sat in the penthouse. He poured a drink and then didn't drink it. He sat there for a while. Then he called his attorney and withdrew the clause contest from the divorce settlement. No explanation, just withdrawn. It was the smallest, quietest, decent thing he had done in years. 1 month later, early morning in a Phoenix home that looked nothing like the Scottsdale penthouse. This place had warmth in it, evidence of two real, specific people everywhere. Her tactical boots by the front door next to his running shoes, a shelf with books in Korean and English pressed together without arrangement, a peace lily on the windowsill that Madison had named Gerald II, after the original Gerald didn't survive the move, a photo of Madison and her mother on the kitchen wall, laughing at something outside the frame. Next to it, slightly smaller, a photo of a man in a factory uniform in Busan, standing in front of a building with his hands at his sides and his face open and proud, Seo-joon's father. Madison had framed it herself after she saw the drawer photo. She hadn't told him she was doing it. She just put it up one morning while he was on his Sunday call. He came downstairs, saw it, stopped, said nothing for about 10 seconds. Then he went and poured his coffee and sat at the table. And she watched his face from across the kitchen and saw everything he wasn't saying, and she understood all of it, and she let him have it in peace. Madison was at the sink, eating cereal, reading something on her tablet. Brooks' protective group had been open for 7 weeks. The client list was ahead of every projection she had made. She had 4 full-time staff, 6 ongoing corporate contracts, and an inquiry from a Scottsdale hospital network that, if it converted, would make Q1 look very different from what she had budgeted. She was also reading a text from Vivian that said, "Schultz case update. Carter's exposure is manageable, but he's going to need a very patient attorney. Not my problem, yours either. Just FYI." She set her phone down and ate her cereal. Seo-joon came downstairs from his run, poured coffee, looked at the cereal. The cereal was the same cereal. It would always be the same cereal. He had accepted this. What he had not accepted was the hour. "It's 6:47 a.m., he said, "and I'm hungry at 6:47 a.m. There is actual food in the actual refrigerator. This is actual food. Madison, do not come for Gerald II on your way to coming for my cereal." He looked at the peace lily. He looked at the cereal. He opened the cabinet and moved the box to the highest shelf. She turned and looked at the cabinet, then at him. He sipped his coffee. She pulled a stool from under the counter, dragged it to the cabinet, climbed it with complete composure, retrieved the cereal, climbed back down, repositioned the stool, and returned to the sink. He watched all of this without expression. "I will renegotiate your contract," she said. "I work for free. Then I'll renegotiate the arrangement. What are the new terms? You leave the cereal alone. Counteroffer," he said. "You eat 1 real breakfast per week, 2 per month, per week. 1.5. He looked at her. "That is not a unit of measurement. It is in my house, our house." She pointed the spoon at him. He raised his coffee cup at her. It was absolutely ridiculous and completely serious all at once, and neither of them was willing to lose, and both of them were already smiling. Then her phone rang. Ruth's face appeared on the screen. Madison put it on speaker immediately because Ruth's calls were always on speaker. She was too expressive to confine to one ear. "Good morning, my baby." "Morning, Mama." "I saw the journal piece again. It was shared on 3 different pages yesterday. 3, Madison. I know. You looked like a whole destiny. Mama, I'm allowed. I'm your mother." A pause. "Seo-joon, are you there?" He stepped closer to the phone. "Good morning, Ruth. Are you feeding her?" "I'm trying." "She's eating cereal again, isn't she?" "Yes." "Madison." "Both of you," Madison said, pointing at the phone and then at Seo-joon with her spoon, "are in a coalition, and I want it disbanded immediately." Ruth laughed. The deep, full Ruth laugh that had been Madison's favourite sound since she was 4 years old. "Baby, I just want to tell you one thing, and then I'll let you get to your day." "What is it, Mama?" A beat. And then Ruth said, simply, quietly, "I knew it was coming. I always knew it was coming for you. I just had to wait for you to know it too." Madison stopped eating. The kitchen was quiet. "I know it now, Mama," Madison said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were not entirely dry. She made no move to hide either. Seo-joon, without a word, put his coffee down and moved next to her and stood there. Not touching. Just next to her. Close enough that she could feel him there. She reached out and touched his hand briefly. He turned his palm over. She let him hold it. Ruth, who could hear everything in her daughter's voice that words didn't carry, said, "All right, baby, go live your life." The call ended. The kitchen was quiet again. After a moment, Madison said, "She likes you more than she likes me." "That is not true. She called your name first. She was asking if you were eating." Madison looked at him. He looked back. This was not a dramatic moment. It was better than dramatic. It was ordinary and warm and completely theirs. "I have a 7:30 call," she said. "I know. And you have Seoul at 8. "Yes. And we have that dinner thing Thursday." "I moved it to Friday," he said. "Your mother is coming Thursday." Madison stared at him. "When did you—" "2 days ago. She mentioned she hadn't seen the house. I called her." "You just—" "Called my mother. She is easy to talk to." "You called my mother and arranged her visit?" "Yes." "Without telling me?" "I was going to tell you this morning." She stared at him for a long moment, a complicated, warm, completely overwhelmed moment. Then she said, "If you ever move my cereal again, I will reorganize your entire desk. My desk is already organized. I will reorganize it differently. That is a genuine threat." "I know." He almost smiled. She almost smiled back. She picked up her cereal bowl and her tablet and walked toward her office. And he watched her go, and the look on his face when he watched her go was not complicated at all. It was just settled. Like a man who had been looking for something for a very long time and found it exactly where he wasn't expecting to. If this story hit you the way we hoped it would, leave a comment right now. Tell us which moment got you the most. We want to hear from you. If you are new here, welcome to Afropop Korean Stories Hub. This is what we do. Stories that feel like something. Stories that stay with you. Hit subscribe and turn on your notifications because the next story is already coming and it is going to hit just as hard. And if you know someone who needs to hear a story about a woman who stopped shrinking and started arriving, share this with them right now. They'll thank you for it. We'll see you in the next one.